You know, when you stand on a coastline, it feels so permanent, right? Like it's been there forever and will be there forever. Well, what if I told you that's not the case at all? The coast is actually this dynamic, ever changing canvas that's constantly being repainted by the incredible power of the sea.
Okay, let's start with a question for you. Have you ever gone back to a favorite beach and noticed it looks a little different? Maybe there's more sand over here or fewer pebbles over there. So, why is that? Why is a beach never the exact same place twice?
The answer, and it's pretty epic when you think about it, is that the coast is basically a battleground. Yeah, a nonstop zone of conflict, this relentless push and pull between the solid land and the immense power of the sea. And in this fight, the sea's frontline soldiers are the waves. To really get what's going on in this battle, you gotta meet the main characters. See, in the whole story of our changing coastlines, there are really two fundamental types of waves, and each one has a totally different personality and a completely different mission. It's actually super simple. Just think of them as the builder and the destroyer. One wave shows up to build the beach, carefully adding sand and pebbles, while the other one arrives with pretty much one goal in mind: to tear it all down. So, how can you tell them apart? Well, it all comes down to their energy and exactly how they hit the shore. Let's break down the key differences between our builder, the constructive wave, and our destroyer, the destructive wave. All right, first up, the builders. Constructive waves have pretty low energy. They kind of gently spill onto the shore. Their forward push, which we call the swash, is really strong, and it carries all that sand and shingle up the beach. But here's the crucial part. Their backward pull, the backwash, is really weak, so it just doesn't have the muscle to drag all that material back out to sea. This is what gives us those awesome, gentle beach slopes we all love, especially in the summer. And then you've got the total opposite, the destroyers. Destructive waves are all about high energy. They crash down with a ton of force. Their swash isn't that strong, but their backwash is incredibly powerful. It acts just like a giant rake, dragging sand and pebbles off the beach and creating these steep, really dramatic coastlines. You're going to see these guys in action during big winter storms or on really exposed coasts. So, we've met the forces, the waves, but how exactly do they, sculpt the land? A destructive wave is kind of like a sculptor, and it has a very specific set of tools that it uses to carve away at the hard rock of our cliffs. The sea's toolkit basically has four main instruments of erosion. Each one is a powerhouse on its own, but when they work together, wow, they're responsible for some of the most spectacular coastal features on the entire planet. First up is hydraulic action, and this is just pure, raw power. Picture a huge wave slamming into a cliff. It's not just the water that does the damage, it's the air. The wave forces air into tiny cracks at insane pressures. This trapped air acts like a wedge, expanding and literally shattering the rock from the inside out. It's just a relentless, powerful hammering. Next on the list is abrasion. Now, this is where the sea gets really clever, because it uses the land's own debris against itself. The waves pick up sand, pebbles, even whole boulders, and just hurl them against the cliff face. It's exactly like a giant, wet piece of sandpaper, constantly grinding away at the rock. Slowly for sure, but it never stops. The third tool is corrosion, and this one is more of a silent, chemical attack. See, seawater is slightly acidic, and over thousands of years, it can actually dissolve certain kinds of rock, like chalk and limestone. It's a much slower process, way more subtle, but it's always there, just quietly eating away at the coastline. And finally, we have attrition. What's so cool about this one is that it isn't about the sea eroding the cliff. It's about the rocks eroding each other. As all those rock fragments get tossed around by the waves, they smash into each other, chipping away at their own sharp edges. This is exactly how we get those beautiful, smooth, rounded pebbles you find on the beach. So the whole thing really boils down to this. How fast this sculpting happens depends on two things. One, the energy of the waves. Destructive waves put the process into overdrive. And two, the type of rock, or what geologists call lithology. And the difference is staggering. I mean, for hard granite, you might be talking about a few millimeters of erosion a year. But for soft clay cliffs, we've seen places where they lose several meters in a single year. It's wild. Okay, so we've got the sculptor, the waves, and we have their tools, those four types of erosion. So, what happens when you apply these forces to a coastline not for a day or a year, but for thousands and thousands of years? Well, you get a masterpiece. And this just shows the process perfectly. It all starts with a tiny crack in a headland. Hydraulic action and abrasion attack that weakness, carving it out into a sea cave. Over time, that cave can punch all the way through to the other side, creating a magnificent sea arch. But the sea isn't done. Eventually, gravity wins, the roof of the arch collapses, and it leaves behind a tall, lonely sea stack. And even that will one day be worn down to a stump, which you'll only see at low tide. It's an incredible, dramatic life cycle. And this same destructive power is responsible for other features too. Waves carve out what's called the wave-cut notch right at the base of a cliff, undercutting it until the rock above just can't support itself and collapses. This is how cliffs actually retreat inland over centuries, leaving behind a flat, rocky shelf called a wave-cut platform. So what's the big picture here? What does all this constant building up and tearing down really mean? Well, it all comes down to one really important idea, something called a dynamic equilibrium. The coastline isn't just winning or losing a battle. It's in a constant state of adjustment. Think of it like a continuous, delicate dance between the forces of creation and destruction. It's a balance that's always shifting, always in motion. And that's really the main thing to remember. The next time you're at the coast, just know that you're not looking at some static, boring landscape. You're looking at a single frame in a very, very long movie. Every single grain of sand, every pebble, every crack in a cliff, it's all part of this epic, endless story of change. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If the coast is truly in a constant state of change, driven by this battle between building and destroying, what will our familiar shores actually look like 100 or even 1,000 years from now?